Call to order. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I don't see a flag in the room, but we all know what it looks like, so imagine one's on the screen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Esther, if we could do roll call.
Committee Member DeLuey.
Present.
Committee Member Zernitskaya.
Present.
Committee Member Galler.
Present.
And Chair Gillich.
Here, present. Got a full house, right? All right, so we'll kind of motor through this agenda, and the first item here is public input on non-agenda items. I don't think we have any chits for that. I'm looking at
No, we don't.
Luis. Okay, no, we don't. All right, then we have public input on agenda items, and I don't think we have chits for those either.
We do not.
Because we're a low-profile committee, so we're under the radar here. All right, so let's move on to item 3, special agenda items. And so I think our 3A is the Volunteer Boards and Commissions Demographic Survey, presented by Oscar. Let's go for it.
Yeah, so really, this is a reminder that you should have received an email from the city about taking a survey, a voluntary survey. So just a reminder about that.
Okay.
If you didn't receive it, let me know because we'll figure out where that went.
We can go ahead. Okay, so we can go ahead and send that, and it's optional. It's something the City Council has asked our office, the City Clerk's office, to do.
Yeah.
So we will go ahead and resend it if you did not receive it.
Who would it have come from? So I can search for it.
It most likely would have come from Xavier Mota.
Okay. All right, I'll look for that. And when is that due? When are you hoping to have all those?
So we're hoping to have them by the end of the month.
Okay.
I'm assuming it's a very simple survey.
It's very simple. It is.
Okay.
And some of you, if you've served on other board of commissions, you may remember it from the previous year. We send it every year. So. And that's it.
All right. So under 3B, progress updates on the initiatives for 2023, 2024.
And I'll take that one. So we have like a short presentation. We'll run through it. All right, so good evening. We're back to the TOT Advisory Committee meeting. And tonight we'll provide you with updates on the progress that we've made to date on the initiatives that were funded with the Measure CS money. But first I want to welcome Jacob Dooley and his appointment to the committee. So welcome. So unless you have any objections, I will follow the same format that we did the first meeting. Basically, I'll just give you an update or an overview of the Measure CS and what that is. And then I'll follow with my colleagues from the Community Development Department, Housing and Human Services Department, Police Department, and Public Works. And they'll provide status on their work around the initiatives. And then feel free to ask questions as we go through this anytime. Feel free to interrupt. So again, I'll start with the overview. The Measure CS was approved by Santa Monica voters in November 8th of 2022 in the general election. The approved measure increased our transit occupancy tax to 15% for hotels and motels and 17% for home shares. The new rates took effect on March of 2023. The ballot measure identified community priorities that would be funded with this money, including expansion of services in the areas of homelessness, public safety, and those will be funded with Measure CS monies. The table included in your agenda packet lists all the various initiatives that were funded, and they're all included in the fiscal year 23-25 biannual budget. We funded about $5.6 million in initiatives in the first year, and then in fiscal year 24-25, it's about $4.9 million in ongoing expenditures. And all these initiatives are supposed to be funded with Measure CS revenue. The TOT Advisory Committee provides oversight and non-binding recommendations on the use of these Measure CS monies. And so now about the money, Year to date, in fiscal year 23-24, we've received about 4.9 million from July to May of 2024. Final numbers, we won't know that until we close the books, the city's books. That'll happen July, August, I would say, is when we know the final numbers for that. So with that, I'll then move now to our progress updates. And we'll start with the Community Development Department. And here are the two initiatives.
All right, I guess that's me. Want me to come there? So Measure CS monies are funding two community development programs. One is for the security services for the pier. The other is for the enforcement of the city's home sharing ordinance. The pier security really covers not only the security guards themselves for the pier itself, which is, I believe it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. No, that's when we have the dark coverage, I'm sorry. So it covers the dark coverage is directed action response team, which is code enforcement, PD staff that monitors for activities on or around the pier. And that's a set schedule Thursday through Sunday, and then we also have overtime coverage Mondays through Wednesdays. And then we also have the security guards themselves. I want to say 8 guards and 1 supervisor that's there every day, I believe. So that's what that program is. Then the home sharing ordinance enforcements. Council approved us to enter into a contract with a company called Granicus. They used to be known as Host Compliance. It's an online web scraping company that monitors the various home sharing short-term rental websites, scrapes together aggregates everything, puts it in feeds it to different cities, helps us monitor short-term rental activity in the city, helps us engage in tax collection, licensing, regulations, stuff like that, as well as address monitoring and enforcement. So it's a good system. I've used it in my previous position with a different city. But we literally just signed a contract last week. It's taken us a lot longer than what we were hoping for, but we should be rolling that out any day now. The community is ready for it. So that's where we're at.
Okay, any questions? We'll move on to the next one.
Sorry. With the new system, how is that being monitored? I understand that it's a system that will tell you, I guess, if there's home sharing, and then what happens from there? How do you proceed with stopping it?
No different than we were previously. Once we can identify a location of where it's taking place, that's really the hardest thing to do, to identify the where and who. Then it's going to follow our progressive enforcement process. We'll issue a warning to the violator, or the property owner, whoever it might be. Then if they still don't comply, and by comply, that can mean either enter the legal home sharing program or cease doing it. So if they don't do one of those things, then they will go through the citation process. Then if we need to, we'll engage the services of the city attorney's office to take it even further. But the real value to this is that it automates a lot of previously very labor-intensive processes. So we're hoping to be able to be far more efficient. And rather than going off after one advertisement at a time, or one particular unit at a time, we can go after an individual, but hopefully identify all of the units that they have within the city, so maybe we can actually cast a wide net.
Regarding the pier, how's it going? The vendor situation is...
It's a very broad question.
Regarding the vendor situation, the illegal vendors, Merced family, all that, and homelessness.
I don't think I can speak to the homelessness situation, so if you're okay, I'd rather engage handler for that particular issue. But as far as vending, it's up and down thing. I mean, we're seeing real progress in some areas. We're seeing some backsliding in other areas. And I would say we're far better today than what we were 2, 3, 4 years ago, like significantly better. And we're currently going through the process of implementing new changes and new regulations for the vending community. We're having semi-regular conversations with the vendors themselves, some of their representatives. So I like where we're headed. It's just not going as fast as I would like to see.
And do the vendors that we're talking about, are they only on the pier under your purview, or are they up in Palisades Park?
We actually don't allow vending directly on the pier, so that's prohibited. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it does. But it's really along the bike path, basically everywhere except for the pier. We're seeing a lot of activity in Palisades Park, and that's one of the areas that we're going to try to roll out a new stationary sidewalk vending lottery program. So, you know, if you're not selected as one of the candidates for that week, you can't be there. So that tells us that'll hopefully bring us a little bit more measure of control to that area. And right now, it's a relatively chaotic situation.
So I was wondering, with the pier's busy season coming up, and I'm sorry if you already covered this, are the services going to be ramped up for the next couple of months?
For code enforcement, yes, we've already actually expanded our DART team from a code enforcement perspective, and even PD has been amazing. They've been such a fantastic partner, as well as fire and public works, everybody. This time last year, we had 2 dedicated people to the DART team, but we've shifted things recently where our newly hired lead code enforcement officer, that position used to be dedicated like to a Monday through Friday schedule, but I really wanted somebody with an elevated level of decision-making authority to be on that weekend schedule, kind of be the eyes and ears for myself and management. So now we have 3 dedicated people on the DART team. And then in early July, I'm going to take one of our newer officers, transition her to the DART team to at least get us through the really busy season. So we are expanding our operations.
If I can add to that, because I'll talk about it, but since we're already on the topic, the DART team, as Dan talked about, is this combination. So our officers, we use CS dollars for overtime, so that we can expand those hours for the DART team to operate. This team is pretty highly specialized, right? They know the vendors, they know the vendors, they know the activity. They kind of follow them around through the lots, through the bike path, through these areas. And as Mr. Mack said, it is night and day down there. And if you've ever taken a walk down there and how we deal with those vendors, shortly here I'm waiting on stats, and I'll be able to provide you some stats on what the DART team is doing on a daily basis. But highly effective of also dealing with vendors, and also encampments on the beach. They're the primary addressers of encampments and the homelessness in those areas on the beach as well.
Derek, can you remind us what DART stands for Jacob's benefit as well?
Yeah, Directed Action Resource Team. Or Response Team. Sorry, Response Team.
All the acronyms.
Yes,
I know.
There's lots of those.
EDMA, too darn many acronyms. Can I ask one more question? On the funding too, I'm really glad that y'all have now signed the contract for the technology for the home sharing ordinance. I was just wondering, with that, assuming that there's more enforcement activity and more fines and things like that, do you anticipate that having this will also help bring in more revenues in the form of fines and things like that?
Easy answer is yes, only because my team has not been engaging in short-term rental enforcement really since August, when our previous officer, who was assigned to that, left for a different position in another city, and I just didn't have staff to backfill that. So yes, I would assume that we're going to issue more over the coming years, since we didn't really issue any over the past year. But yes, I would expect it. Then we also created a new fine structure compared to previous years, where it was just a set fine amount, let's say $500 for the first citation, $1,000, $1,500, I don't even know what they were. Now it's, the fine amounts are pegged to the minimum advertised daily rate. So whatever, if you were to rent an Airbnb in Santa Monica, whatever the least amount of money that you can spend for that particular unit, The first citation is, I want to say, 200% of that total amount. So if it was you're allowed to rent it for a minimum of 3 days at $250 a day, that's $750. So it'd be $750 times 200. Then the second citation would be 400 and 600, or please don't hold me to those specific percentages. But what that does is it makes the fine more commensurate with the benefit received. And it's also not absurdly expensive for really the low-level violator. If you have somebody that's renting their couch out for $20 a night, it doesn't make sense to have a $500 fine. It can bankrupt that person, whereas to another person that has the $5,000 a night place, that's a cost of doing business. So I think it's much more fair and equitable.
That's great. Thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.
You know what, I realized that I was remiss in not introducing Jacob or giving him a chance to introduce himself. So if we could pause on that to take care of something that should have happened a few minutes ago, and then perhaps a quick run around for all of you too for Jacob's benefit.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Carry on, Jacob. Sorry.
My name is Jacob DeLuey. I'm the AGM at the Huntley Hotel just down the street on 2nd. Super excited to be on this committee and provide feedback to better the city.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Probably figure out who's who based on the
Yeah,
conversation.
pretty much that's everyone here.
Started.
Yeah.
I'm Jennifer Young. I'm the budget manager. I work with Oscar in finance.
I'm Oscar Santiago, the city's finance director.
I'm David White, the city manager for the city.
I'm Mr. Lita Luba, I'm a deputy city clerk, and I work in the city clerk's office.
And I'm Albert Gilch, the forgetful chair of this committee.
Danielle Galler, GLBM president.
Pleasure.
Natalia Turnskid, community member and active city participant.
Rick Falsey, Director of Public Works.
Pleasure.
Heather Averick, Director of Housing and Human Services.
I'm Derek Jacob. I'm with the fire department.
Daniel Mick, I'm the code enforcement manager.
Thank you. Pleasure, guys.
And we also have Adriana Franco.
Yep.
She's our business analyst. She provides support to this committee. And then Luis Fernandez provides
Thanks,
support
Eric.
to finance.
That was a good refresher for everyone.
Yeah.
Now we're back on track. I take for granted that everyone knows each other all the time. Okay, so let's move on from this topic to, I guess, the next.
Housing and Human Services.
Yeah, there we go.
So we have 3 initiatives that are under Measure CS funds, and 2 of those have been fully expended. The first one is expansion of our C3 homeless multidisciplinary team. So we now have 3 fully operating outreach teams that's operated by the people concerned. The second was expansion of San Michelle to allow for 24/7 intakes by first responders. I just want to clarify, by first responders only. And that was complete as of March, and we are currently we have taken 12 since opening from SMPD. And then the third initiative under Measure CS is the creation of a citywide homelessness strategic plan. And that will really be the framework that guides our efforts moving forward across all departments. We have a consultant that's working on that, and we plan to take that to council early 2025. That has not been fully expended yet, just because that work is ongoing, but we anticipate fully expending the remainder of those funds early 2025 once their work is done.
Great. Questions, Steve?
That's so exciting.
Go for it.
So you mentioned the San Michelle, it's for intakes by first responders only. Can you clarify what exactly that means? Like, is it a first responder sees someone on the street and they're like, oh, they're sleeping, I need to, it looks like they're suffering some sort of, health issue, they need to go here, or is it just, I'm just not quite clear on what it means.
So I guess why I'm making that distinction is that it's not like a community, like we live in the community, both of us, right? We couldn't approach someone and say like, hey, there's a shelter open right now in the middle of the night. Could I take you there? Like that's not the intent of the current 24/7 expansion. And so really it was created to be able to have a space to offer to individuals when officers encounter someone at night. I'll just add, full disclosure, this also is a result of existing laws in place which don't allow you to just enforce. Being homeless is not a crime. And so you have to be able to offer a shelter bed to even feel free to chime in at all. But to even like cite someone. So that is in large part what led to the creation of, all right, we'll expand so that there's 24/7 access to San Michelle. All those beds are for our Santa Monica priority place, or people who, let's say an officer meets someone in the middle of the night, they say, hey, like you can't be here, and but we have a shelter, do you want to go? The person says yes, great. They aren't a long time, like what we qualify as a Santa Monica priority participant. They can still go in, and there is an agreement whereby the people concerned who operate San Michelle will then make sure that that person is relocated. I don't even want to say the amount of time. It's like short, though, very short. They have to move them to a bed that is not funded by the city.
Okay.
So you say it's been taking people from 24/7 since March?
Correct.
Has it been busy? Like, are there a lot of middle of the night homeless who end up there, or how's that been working? And are there beds for them when they arrive at 4 in the morning?
So I will say, yes, we have beds for people right now.
Okay.
It is not at full occupancy. Feel free to chime in on like how you feel like it's working in terms of middle of the night. But in total, thus far, we've had 12 referrals that kind of fall within that time frame of 24/7 since opening 24/7.
12 referral?
12 people brought to the shelter who are like at the
Since
shelter
March.
since March.
Is that a good number?
Well, I want to also clarify, that's only from SMPD. We have referrals into San Michelle from Step Court. That number is a little bit higher, I believe, actually. And then there are other ways to get referred in. Like if one of our outreach teams encounters someone who is open, I mean, this is the other thing I'll just add, you can't force someone to take shelter. You can offer it. We can't force them to take it. So if an outreach worker encounters someone who is like, yes, I am willing to take a bed at San Michelle, great. They're also able to avail themselves of those beds. But
Yeah, and I was just going to say that. So, it should be noted that like when we encounter someone on the street, typically it takes multiple encounters before they even take any help, right? And we have an alternative to incarceration when we actually arrest people and then take them into the jail. But if we encounter them, say they're sleeping in the park, and we ask them to get up and move, or we issue them a citation, and then we offer them, they can go to shelter. Sometimes they say, yeah, no, I'll just go find another place to sleep. I don't want a shelter bed. And sometimes they do. And so that's kind of the hard part. And sometimes we have to catch people right at that kind of rock bottom part before they're willing to go in and willing to accept any type of help and resources from them. So it's kind of this ongoing thing. And once they start to see that it's not attached to anything, and they will then, it's depends on the day, depends on the weather, depends on what we got going on.
Okay. And like you said that they're also connected with the people concerned. Does that mean that they have access to other resources like permanent housing, or if they need to get like a new ID or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. San Michelle has case managers and yeah.
And to clarify, the funding isn't going to San Michelle, it's going to the team that helps bring the people there.
No, the funding actually went to the redesign of San Michelle. So the way that San Michelle is just like the big tent. You probably definitely passed it. So it was just like envision a wide open space. I mean, it's separated for men and women, but what everyone felt very strongly about in terms of like the operations and functionality of bringing someone in the middle of the night is that there needed to be like a wall built so that, and like a space, a little room for someone to come in while you're doing paperwork, and it's not just like, hey, disruptive to everybody that's already sleeping in the middle of the night. So that's what the funds went towards.
Got it. Great.
Question about the homelessness strategic plan. Now, is this in addition to or instead of the plan that we had a couple of years ago, homelessness action plan?
So from my understanding, and feel free, others have been here much longer, I'll just add, for those of you who don't know, I've been with City now for 7 months, so
Gotcha.
it's slowly ticking up, yes. But to my knowledge, we've actually not had ever maybe a citywide homelessness strategic plan. So I don't know what previous plan maybe you're referencing, but I don't think we've ever had a homelessness strategic plan.
May not have been called that, but there was a homelessness action plan, something like that. When I ran for council 2 years ago, Natalia probably remembers, I read that. So I was on the right page with that topic. And it was quite thorough, and there were a lot of proposed solutions and directions forward. It seemed pretty clear, so I don't know if this, I'm just curious, is this an update to it or a replacement?
I would say definitely it's its own creation. It's a creation in and of its own self.
But I would just add, everything is built on the foundation that you have today. Like, it's not like we're just building a whole new direction necessarily, but we're gonna augment, amplify, build upon, enhance all the great work we're doing today.
So to clarify, it is going to be built, like it's going to be built on the 4-pillar strategy of the
Yes.
Okay. And if anybody doesn't know what those 4 pillars are, I have them up right now and I'm happy to read them.
Yeah, please remind us.
1, prevent house Santa Monicans from becoming homeless and increase the supply of affordable housing. 2, address the behavioral health needs of vulnerable residents. 3, maintain equitable access to safe, fun, and healthy open spaces. And 4, strengthen regional capacity to address homelessness. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Natalia. Okay, about the multidisciplinary outreach teams. Now, can you tell us a bit more about that? Like the hours they work, how many people are part of them? I think you said there are 3 or 4 teams now?
So there are a total of 3 teams now. This Measure CS funding went to the addition of a 3rd team. So previously there was a beach team and there's a downtown team. So now the 3rd C3 team covers like the remainder of the city. Specifically, that includes Lincoln, Pico, Wilshire, Santa Monica corridors. They go there twice per week. Montana, Olympic, Ocean Park, Main Street corridors once a week. And, obviously all of our city parks they frequent as well. There are 4 people on that 3rd team. And they operate Monday through Friday. Usually, they do their outreach like more in the morning time just because that tends to be when they have the most success and people are moving about the most. But they are not evenings or weekends.
And are they just kind of out walking around, or are they called to a specific location if there's an issue?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's a little bit. So they have quadrants, right? Like they have this plan, like, okay, here's where we're going to go, and they're going to do the rounds. So if, let's say, nothing else comes up, that would be what they did. But oftentimes they've already engaged with an individual, and they have to follow up with them, whether it's to like take them to an appointment or, help them to get their ID, all of those things. So like if they have an existing client that they've been working with, then they would do that in addition to these other things. Also, sometimes with the C3 team, if we get a 311 call and it's, not something that is necessarily like an enforcement issue that help team would assess or deal with, then really that is, we'd say, hey, TPC, like we have this individual in need, can you go there? So that also happens. So it's kind of, it's not like one or the other, it's kind of all of these 3 different pathways.
How's it going? In addition to the 3rd team?
I mean, I think it's great that they're up and operating. Just to be really transparent in the services world and outreach, it's really hard work, and there's a lot of turnover across like all service providers, and not even just here in Santa Monica. And staffing those positions up can also be really challenging. So I think that's fantastic that they're fully staffed and operating.
We were talking about a team of 4 meeting with a client they met with before, taking them to an appointment. Are all 4 team members doing that with that one person, or can they split up?
They split up. Yeah. I think they definitely split up. I don't want to speak on their behalf as to whether they do like isolated outreach in the field solo, because I think sometimes just for safety purposes, same reason like help team officers also go out in twos is you want to make sure there is someone there as well. But yeah, it's not like all 4 say, okay, let's all get in the car and take this person to DMP. It doesn't work like that.
Any other questions?
You said that obviously you can't force someone to shelter. So these people that we do still see on the streets day after day, if they're saying no, there's just nothing to do. So that's fine.
Yeah, and okay. When you say there's nothing we can do, like there is, sort of. So that's where, as Deputy Chief was saying, like they have a process that we have continued because of the way the laws currently are to kind of also protect the city from liability. And so it's that they cite someone 3 times, which, you go, they say, hey, like, you're not allowed to be sleeping here in the park, it's closed. We have this shelter bed, do you want it? No, I don't. Okay, well, we're gonna write you this citation. They come back, oh, hey, remember, we had the conversation, you can't be here, you're still here. They write them another citation. They come back, person's still there, 3rd citation. After the 3rd citation, then they will take them in. Like, they will, well, arrest them, but often, right, then you generally release them.
Right, if it's an arrestable citation. And so typically it's a warn, kind of times where we take these things called field interview cards, we're talking to people. We have our DMH clinicians that are out. We're referring to 3C teams. We're referring to folks trying to get people into housing. So we're directing, and we're trying, and we're noting. And then after, say, the 3rd time, if we noted you're still in the same place, still kind of in the same thing, then we start kind of the stick part of the carrot to get you in to start that process. And so then you will get the citations, and then, if you have warrants or what have not, that may lead to arrest, and then you get brought in. That leads you into another path, as I said, through diversion that we do at our jails, or it could lead them into a path where we can send them home through Project Homecoming. It could lead them, there's a bunch of different avenues. Not one case is the same case as the same case. But our goal is to try to continuously engage, and the police department is obviously one part of the cog in the wheel that does that.
And so for the most part, you feel like you're able to ID them and to keep some sort of track.
Yeah.
And I have one more question, sorry. Remind me, but San Michelle is currently the only area right now for housing that's provided by the city?
It is the only city-funded shelter beds.
Okay. And it's part of the expansion plan or part of the homelessness plan to provide any more areas like this?
By areas like this, do you mean shelter beds? I don't want to speak to the homelessness strategic plan just because it's not done yet. What I will highlight is that, I said this, it's not fully occupied. So I think that begs the question of, like, is there a need for that? If people, congregate living spaces are often not the preferred living situation, and that makes sense. And so just because we build more of those doesn't mean they would get filled.
I mean, one thing we talked about last time, I've lived here 20 years, we've had multiple conversations about this over that time, but is there a better solution to San Michelle? That space is fine, but it is, like you said, a tent. So if we were to take that down and put a multi-story building there and deck it out in a 21st century way, is that a better solution for the problem we have? And, give us a little hint, will that be in the homelessness?
Yes, it will. Yes, that will.
Sorry, could you please just remind us who are the people who are part of the multidisciplinary outreach teams?
I had a feeling someone was going to ask me that, and I just don't remember off the top of my head. I can get it for you, but I just don't remember it off the top of my head. There's a clinician, but
I remember it was some sort of combination of like social worker, healthcare professional, sometimes mental health professional,
and a clinician. Do you remember? And then,
Exactly.
Yeah. Someone from the police too, right?
No.
I think there's also a lived experience.
Yeah,
there's also someone with lived experience.
Lived experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. I didn't remember what they were, what roles they were in. It was only 4 people. I'm like, okay, some combination of those.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing we talked about at length when we met back in January, when Satari was here, was how this is a Monday through Friday service that we offer, but homelessness is not a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 problem. Are there plans to, and I remember, and the reason we were given that those are limited hours because a lot of the service providers aren't open at those other times either. So even if the health team was able to help someone get somewhere, there was nowhere to take them because that whatever facility is closed on weekends, after hours, whatever. Are we looking at ways to have expanded hours for our service providers so that these multidisciplinary teams can work more hours, be available on the weekends? Because our weekends are our busiest time here, especially in the summer, and that's when stuff happens.
Yeah.
Monday through Thursday is kind of quiet in most parts of Santa Monica. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, watch out. So that's when I feel I would love to see those teams, a robust response to things that are going on around.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I'll highlight, right, San Michelle is now open 24/7. So, like, that's a big win in terms of this. But, yeah, absolutely. I don't think we all recognize that that's an ongoing need. And it is definitely something we're also discussing in the creation of the homelessness strategic plan. Again, I'll just also highlight that even if we were to say, okay, great, like, we have the funds and we're going to move this forward and we want you to work Saturday and Sunday, staffing up outreach work is just really challenging. And so we also would have to work with our service provider agencies to see could they even staff those positions. So I'm not saying that's a reason not a reason to proceed with that, but just highlighting like that would be an additional challenge if we proceed in that direction.
Okay. Anyone else? All right.
Thanks.
The police department has two funded programs. One of them is the expansion of security services in the downtown parking structures. We use a contract security company called Good Guard, and they work from either 9 or 11 p.m. at night. Sometimes they switch their shifts until 7 in the morning. And so they're in all the city's downtown parking structures, the civic parking lot. They're in the Ken Edwards Center. They respond to the library for all those hours. And so so they move to wherever we need them. So if we see that there's an uptick in auto bergs in a parking structure, we'll move them and we'll change their hours. We'll have them specifically stay in one or two parking structures if we're seeing that. What we have seen is a significant decrease in our auto thefts and our auto burglaries in those parking structures. We've seen a decrease in the calls for service that people call us for homeless related issues. They work hand in hand with Legion Security, which is the downtown contracted security team that works there as well. They work well with our officers. They're in constant contact with us and work well. They call us when they need us, but for the most part, they're self-sufficient in what they do. And so it's been a highly successful program in our areas where we use them. The other part was to increase police staffing and expand the homeless liaison team. Currently, we are understaffed. And that happens from way back from 2020, as you may not know. It takes about 18 months to get a police officer up and ready to go, and that's not even including the hiring part of it. That's just the kind of training and off FTO in the police academy. And then there's some timing that goes in between that to hire them. So it could take up to 2 years sometimes before we end. So we're kind of rolling from a deficit. COVID years, police academy stopped. As you know, it was also 2020 was the great retirement for police officers. People stopped becoming cops, and it's still a difficult thing for us. But in the last 2 years, our city has hired 55 new officers, and we're rolling strong on that and continuing to bring in our new staff. In the meantime, what we're doing to cover the shortages that we're missing on the 7 days a week, we're now be going to 5 days a week on our help team. We're going to 5 days a week, and then doing overtime on the weekends to address homelessness. Currently, our help team is highly specialized. So all of our officers are homeless officers. The vast majority of our calls for service that deal with homelessness are handled by our patrol officers, not our help team. Our help team is highly focused. They deal with those kind of service-resistant individuals, our high utilizers, our HUGs that we call them, our high utilizer group. That's what they're really focused on, and also dealing with really kind of the freeway encampments and things all over the city. And so we use overtime to supplant some of that stuff with what they're doing, and we also use patrol for that. Part of those monies, as I talked about earlier, are also going to the DART team that we're using for that, and the DART team has been highly successful, and as I promised, I have some stats. So year to date, they've written 27 sites, they've made 123 arrests, they've addressed 152 encampments along the beach, and they've done 217 field interview cards, and that's just year to date on what they do. And that's not even including what our officers are doing, what our help team is doing. So our DART team is working with our partners is highly effective, and we get to now using some of these dollars for overtime to move them onto the weekends they're already assigned to the weekends, but during the week on some other things that they can do and help with that. So it's highly effective, and we want to continue using those dollars for that right now until we get our staffing up.
Do you staff based on our peak periods of the week, like we just talked about? It's not a Monday through Friday issue, we're working on weekends thankfully, but do you really load up on Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and then taper off?
So some interesting things that we've, Santa Monica, if you've been here in Santa Monica for any length of time, Santa Monica used to be a Friday, Saturday town. We used to ramp up in the summertime. We used to slow down in the wintertime. That is no longer the case. We're busy 7 days a week. We're busy at all times of the year. Do we get busier in the summertime? Obviously, starting right now, but there's no real distinction between our days of the week when we can have crime and when we have crime. We have more visitors, obviously, on the weekends, so that, especially in the summertime, so that obviously elevates the need for more personnel out there, because we will see more victims, more crimes, and as people are drawn to that. So yes. So to answer your question, yes, especially on certain days of the week, like 4th of July coming up. We have a 4th of July deployment where we're ramping up our deployment of our officers. We just did so Memorial Day. We did during spring break. Our beach overtime increases, our pier overtime increases. We offer special overtime for our downtown units because we know our folks are going to be walking out on our 3rd Street Promenade in our area. So yes, to answer your question, but we don't really see much of a increase as far as crime. Slight decreases, but for the most part, we're a year-round, 7 day a week kind of busy city now.
Any other questions?
I was just going to ask, how many members are there on the health team?
There are 9 members on the health team right now. So we're trying to push that number to 12 so that we can go 7 days a week.
Thank you.
And a sergeant. We've added partially. The CS dollars got us 1 sergeant, I believe 6 officers. We've increased that to 9 so far, kind of piecemeal. So we need to add more officers, and we're slated to add a supervisor onto that so that we can run 7 days a week.
Awesome. Thank you.
2 questions then. How many, you said that you expanded security services. You have 55 now added to the police department. How many security guards did you add?
So the security guards have always been there, and I think they run, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they run a roving patrol of 4 a night. If I'm not mistaken, they can branch off into 2 and 2, and then they roll around the parking structure. So they're not constantly in one parking structure. They're constantly patrolling all the parking structures, patrolling the Ken Edwards Center, the Civic Lot, and it's kind of this roving patrol and our library.
Great. And then my second question was, so if we don't have necessarily a team right now overnight that takes people and asks people to go to a shelter, when you're called because there's some sort of issue, is your team trying to bring them over to a shelter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's every officer. Every officer is a homeless officer.
Right.
Every officer deals with homelessness. It's one of the major things that we deal with in our city. And so we're all kind of trained in that kind of that thing. We don't go a day. It's impossible to go a day in this city and be anybody in our department and not deal with the homeless folks. That includes our professional staff, our CSOs, our PSOs, who deal with, who are on our 3rd Street, who deal within our parks, especially those folks.
So would you say right now that is the number one still concern? I know in 2020 it was. Would you say that's still the call you're getting the most?
I have been here for 20 years, and it has always been a priority for us. Always.
Hopefully not after this plan.
Yeah, but one thing I will say is this, is that with the coordination, we're getting better, and we are doing things to address things to be better. We have, as the city gets better at fine-tuning what we do, we're getting better at addressing things. And, it should be noted that other police departments come to our city to figure out how to address homelessness, because we've been doing this stuff for 30 years. And so as we fine-tune, as our sword gets sharper, we're figuring out new ways to do things, new dollars to do with things, and working with our partners. And that's how we do it. I used to make a joke that we only deal with homeless folks who identify themselves as criminals, right? That used to be the thing. But now that's not true. That's not true. It's not what we do now. And we're invested in it, and the city's invested in it. And so we work really hard with it.
Do
One last follow-up on that then.
Oh, yeah.
Would you say that you're still seeing that crime right now is still heavily related to the homeless situation in San Juan?
I think, well, I would say this. Homelessness, there's certain crimes right, there's kind of livability issues that are signed to kind of homelessness that are out there. So, but I can say that most of our homeless folks aren't doing like home invasion robberies. They're not, they're not stealing, they're not robbing banks, they're not, there's different types of crimes that associate that with that. But those livability issues, those livability crimes, yes, we do deal with those. Those folks are with that.
Do you see it getting better?
I do, and with that, there's a bunch of different, we have stats to prove that. We can say we're doing that. I think our coordinated efforts are doing that, but there's a lot of things that are outside of our control. Right, there's laws that have to be changed, and I'm not going to get political on it, but it has nothing to do with kind of the local stuff. But in our 5150 laws and dealing with that, and I know our city's has been a major player in trying to push that. And 5150, for those who don't know, is a danger to yourself or others, right? And gravely disabled. So if you want to kill yourself, if you want to hurt others, or you're gravely disabled, meaning you're not taking care of yourself, I can take you in for a mental health evaluation, right? But if you're sitting on the corner in your own feces, haven't bathed in 3 months, talking to your pet rhinoceros, I can't touch you. And that is an absolute travesty. We have a mental health crisis on our streets along with the homeless issue, and we need to change those coordinated to get better. And so the creation of these teams that are happening, the Santa Monica Police Department working with the Department of Mental Health, we have 2 clinicians that work with our police department to address these issues and to address these things. Yeah, we see that because we're getting better at that. Yeah.
And this also is not related to Measure CS funding, but just if I could add.
Yes.
Like, it's such an important topic, but we also have the therapeutic transport team van that's also out and operating now. And again, with staffing, they weren't able to staff up 24/7, but we now at least have them Monday through Friday. And that's huge because they co-dispatch with either fire or PD to calls for housed or unhoused, because also, let's be clear, like mental health issues are not exclusive to our unhoused population. And they can go out and transport people for 5150 hold, which then allows the officer to continue doing their work here in the city without having to go take them somewhere. So that's a huge addition to our community too.
Do they have to take them all the way to Torrance with the therapeutic transport van, or
So
is there
that's the
somewhere?
beauty sometimes of having DMH workers, because they can arrange alternate housing because they're clinicians. And so their level of expertise goes well beyond what a police officer can do or what anyone else can do. And they can set up different housings. They can determine that a person can go past 72 hours if needed, and they can set them up in some and if they're already under care, they have the ability to search the system, which we don't. To search the system to see if they need help, to see if they need further help, if they're connected to other services with it. So that's the beauty part of having DMH and the therapeutic transport van in our city.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Of course.
So that brings us to Public Works. Measure CS funds 3 efforts in Public Works departments, and those efforts focus primarily on the third pillar that Natalia mentioned, which is equitable access to clean and safe open spaces in the city. The first one is the maintenance of the water features at Ken Gesser and Tonko Parks. That basically provides funding for Public Works to maintain those features, keep them running, do periodic maintenance, do the treatment to reduce algae and control vector breeding. The second effort is the tree pruning in high traffic areas. We spent the last year's funding on about 800 palm trees, various species of palm trees along Ocean Avenue, 21st Street, and Wilshire Boulevard. And those funds have been expended for this fiscal year, so we're looking forward to the next fiscal year so we can keep going. And then the third effort is the, not to add to the acronym soup, but we have HOST, which is basically a team that, it's the homeless support team. It supports DMT, HLP, whenever there's state encampment. We go out there and support the PD to help clean up any no debris, trash that's left by the homeless community. The team, to Heather's point, it took a while for us to staff up because it takes some time for the hiring process. But what we did to remedy that is the first half of this year, we deployed a vendor for the city, Mariposa, who came in twice a week to take on the duties of the host team while we were gearing up to hire the permanent staff. We are now staffed up. We have a team of 3 city employees, a crew leader, and 2 maintenance workers. They started in May. And so the way it's set up is they have a routine on a daily basis, but they are now able to drop what they're doing whenever we get a call from HLP or DMT or 311 tickets. Because what happened in the past is we had to scramble staff that had their core duties. We had to stop cleaning a bathroom at the beach, for example, or we'd have to pull groundskeepers from the parks and stop what they're doing so we can provide the support to HHS and PD. Now we have a dedicated team of 3 that is designed to drop what they're doing and be able to provide support. And so we're about 60% expended funds. We have additional expenditures for the team that's now on board and the purchase of equipment. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Is that did you have a team like that before?
Nope.
Or is this brand new position?
It's a brand new team. Like I mentioned, in the past when we were trying to support PD or HHS, we had to drop what we were doing with other staff that had different duties. You basically ended up with a bathroom at the beach being locked up because we had to take our custodians from the bathroom cleanup efforts to help support cleanup in the encampment. Now we have a dedicated team that's solely designed to help provide that support in addition to addressing 311 tickets or running a routine. We've divided the city in 4 quadrants, and every day of the week they're out there cleaning up the quadrants. We focus on hotspots where we know that there are regulars that create this environment that isn't pleasant or aesthetically pleasing to the eye. And so we have our routine, but we're designed to drop what we're doing so that we can provide the support.
Does this include some of the issues that we had in our parking structures, the elevators, and things like that? I mean, do you get down to the granular stuff, or is it only larger?
If it gets reported through a 311 ticket, that lands with the host team.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in terms of belongings, so technically we don't have encampments in Santa Monica, but we will see areas where there's a lot of stuff. What do you do with that?
If the concern is that it's personal belongings of persons experiencing homelessness, we'll reach out to PD because PD is trained to identify whether it's a backpack that might have important documents. We'll reach out to PD to help provide that determination on whether something is considered trash or whether something's considered personal belongings. We had extensive discussions with the attorney's office so that our staff does not end up throwing out personal belongings of a person who's experiencing homelessness.
And if it is someone's personal property, we go take it in and see it.
So they know where to get it.
Right. Put a tag on it and put it in personal and see it.
How's it been going? I think things are pretty good.
It is
stuff every now and then, so.
the best thing since sliced bread.
Thank you so much. That's a really big program that I feel like you don't think about. And when you go like downtown LA, I live in Culver City, and under the freeways, you just see messes, and you never think, oh, there should be a team that cleans this up. So that's really great.
Yeah. So.
I recognize it only started in May, but do you have any stats available on like how much has been cleaned up?
I think we had about 1,200 tons of waste collected over. Let me see if I had some stats here for you. Oh, I embellished that. It was 115 tons, not 50. 115 tons of debris. We addressed about 1,040 service requests.
And that's only in like 1 month?
Well, no, because like I mentioned, in the first half of the fiscal year, rather than wait for us to be staffed up, we brought in a contractor so that we could get started with the cleanup process and provide the support that was needed. So this covers the entire year.
Awesome.
And you just coordinate with the trash companies too.
Yeah, which is a city department that I oversee as well.
And where do most of your calls come from? downtown, pier area,
A lot of
freeway.
downtown, beach, parks. I don't have the exact percentages, but we can create that kind of a metric if that's of interest to the oversight committee.
Not to add to your to-do list, but I'm just curious to see. I mean, I think we can all imagine where it comes from. All right. Any other questions?
Since there's like a lot having to do with homelessness that has to do with a lot of different departments, is there some sort of technology that y'all use to kind of track, individuals who might be experiencing homelessness to make sure their like needs are being addressed, and also that we're dealing with all of the other externalities that come with folks who are experiencing homelessness and having to sleep on our streets?
So I can speak to that a little bit because, so there is the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, and the city does use HMIS. But by that, let me clarify, because Public Works would not be allowed to use that system, nor would PD, because there's confidential information. Like, I myself don't even use it. So it's really, it tells like a very broad picture of someone's mental health history and where they stayed and all of that things. And that just opens up like HIPAA concerns. So that system cannot be used by other respective teams.
Is there a system that has kind of like anonymized data, or not maybe person specific, but just area specific issues or anything like that? I might be overthinking this.
No, we did have a program that basically went antiquated out. It stopped working basically. But we did have a system that did that officers could use, and that it would get then seen by our partners over in the city. We could then get the full screen and then hopefully put that out. It just didn't. The interface didn't really work with us, but that was years ago, and we tried. We were looking at that type of process. I think the city just invested in the police departments getting a RMS system, CAT RMS system, computer-aided dispatch record management system. That record management system, that's how we in the police department track our everyone that we do, our FIs, reports. And so now when we pull up a name on a person, right, I have to go, I'm talking to Heather today, and I run Heather's name. All of her addresses, every single time I contacted her, every single thing will pop up. And so in the essence of sharing, we then give that to our partners over at the, for the 3C teams, the hamster teams, right? Where did you guys last see Jack Smith? Well, let me see. Here's the last five locations we contacted, and we give that to our partners so they can do that.
Well, that sounds amazing. And you don't have to write it down every single time. It's like going to a doctor's office and having to tell them your medical history every single time. We all have this in the computer. I feel like that's kind of.
So our new system just went live in May, and so now we're in the process of kind of moving things over. But again, it's data in, gets us our best data out. So we're still a little bit away from getting some real good data out of it, but the city is thinking about it, and we are working on that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Another question?
Are we asking all the good questions that you're like?
Yes. Jacob's just absorbed. Does that conclude the presentation? Oh no, this one.
So the final item was, we were supposed to come back to you when we have money to appropriate. We haven't had meetings, we went to council last month. Council gave us direction that we needed to add more police officers. So we're tapping into any new SRGS money that we can get above what we already programmed to be able to fund some of the police officers. So we're going to be funding 4 new police officers by the next fiscal year. A portion of that's going to come from the realignment of some of the capital projects. The rest of it is going to come from Measure CS money above and beyond what we've already appropriated. So that's what we're doing with the money until we can.
And do we know what that number is? How much is coming out?
Measure CS, we anticipated that above and beyond what we've already budgeted, about $500,000 annually. So that's what we're anticipating we will bring in. Now our revenues are coming in not as great from TOT. So hopefully we get the $500,000 and then it helps us. If not, then we're funding it with general fund money.
And from that meeting, is that the only?
That is the only appropriation
Spend, okay.
in Measure CS money. Yeah, because we're not generating enough yet. we did appropriate about almost 5 million in ongoing expenditures.
Right.
And so, we're anticipating 500 more than that. Now, if things improve, other hotels that are closed right now open, we're hopeful that we'll get more of that, and then we'll come back to you with different numbers. But every time we meet with you, I'll update the numbers and give you, kind of keep track of those numbers.
And do you spend it as it comes in, or do you wait for a period of time where you get this pool of money and then now it's time to fund all of these projects?
Yeah, and so the way it works is we estimate our revenues for the year. We appropriate for the year, and so we spend the money, right? And revenue just comes in, trickles in. Now they're estimated targets, so like TOT, if we don't have enough, then it's going to come out of our general fund. But yeah, we spend it as we go based on the staffing. If we staff, then we spend it bi-weekly. The revenue comes in, trickles in, based on estimates that we work with SMTT on developing the estimates each year.
And I mean, everything seems pretty equitable among the different departments. Yeah. Everyone seems to be getting what they need related to the purview of Measure CS, which is great. How do you prioritize between police, public works, Heather's department, and anyone else who touches safety, cleanliness, and tourism?
So I guess we were lucky that in March of what was the council priorities? 2023?
23, yeah.
In 2023, council, we had a workshop where they identified the city's priorities, community priorities. And we talked about really starting the biggest expansions of the restructure. And so we talked about where can we pull money from? What sources of money are there? Measure CS was one of the sources at the time. So we identified the priorities. Departments submitted their things that they could align to Measure CS initiatives. And so we've already approved all the stuff moving forward, right? So in terms of prioritizing, there's no more prioritizing at this point because we've already identified all the initiatives that we're going to be funded on an ongoing basis. Now, if we, for some reason, receive $1 million more, then the prioritization would be coming to you saying, here's $1 million more, advisory committee. Tell us the things that you think we should fund to recommend to council so that when we go to council with our proposed budget, we say, here's what we heard from the advisory committee, here's what we anticipate to bring in an additional Measure CS revenue. It's just information for you to have to make your deliberations on what you want to fund.
Do you foresee changes with the new fiscal year coming soon? I mean, are we going to continue down with these programs you just presented? Or are there going to be a new set of priorities starting July 1st?
No, these programs are funded on an ongoing basis, right? So they're permanent programs that we have. Now, let's say, for example, you hear something from one of my colleagues that say, this is not bringing in, there's no return on investment here, right? And you want to give them feedback, we'll take that feedback and give it to council, right? Reprioritization, these things are ongoing. They're going to stay there. They're ongoing programs now.
Another question, anyone else?
I assume being on the hotel side that we're currently behind pay spend
Yes, we are.
Okay.
We are. Yeah. And that's what I'm telling you. I'm hopeful that the hotels open and closed. Tourism picks up. We work very closely with SMTT. So our projection is that late 2025, early 2026 is when we're going to start seeing international travel back up, right? And so those are our projections in terms of revenues coming in.
And just so you know, the update from SMTT, I don't know if you were just at the summit, one of the reasons international travel is down so much is also the visa process is a lot more difficult than it used to be. So now it's about 450 days versus it used to take them less than a year to get their visas. So every hotel, including mine, everyone's is down international completely. And domestic travel is like 80%. And that's, I think, also to speak to why it's not busy season anymore in the summer. It's not international people, it's all people from California.
I guess a question to you is the hotel industry. So we have a few things coming, right? The Olympics, we have the World Cup. I mean, what are your projections on that? Because that kind of informs my projections of the revenues.
Well, I've been told we've already booked 10,000 nights for the Olympics in all of our hotels.
And that's not including World Cup, that's just the Olympics.
Yeah, just the Olympics. So that's good.
I'll also say a lot of hotels, for example, I manage my hotels, boutique hotel, very small. We aren't making any contracts for Olympics or for World Cup because we know that last minute business is going to be a lot worse. So you can expect, I would say, we're hoping the last minute business is going to pick up and whatever projections you have, hopefully, even if we're down by 2026, it'll be up by the time that the been essentially done.
So Oscar, one thing I was wondering, and of course, please weigh in the rest of the board, but I'd love to see like a long-term agenda or a wish list or something on our agenda since we don't meet every month.
Definitely, yeah.
If it's twice a year, 3 times a year, we have a meeting, that's fine. If I don't want to add more meetings to people's lives.
Yep.
But ideas come up at odd times, and if we could have like a parking lot for them, I think that'd be great. One thing I'd like to do is, as we mentioned, LA 28,
Yep.
the Olympics and the World Cup. Personally, I don't feel like we're ready, and I don't think there's anyone in this room who feels like we're 100% ready to welcome the world to Santa Monica, let alone LA. And I was wondering if we could start to identify projects that need to happen before all eyes are on us. And we have 4 years to do it. We have Measure CS, we have traffic rebounding or tourism rebounding in a year or two. So I do believe before we're in the spotlight, there will be money and time to take care of certain things. The thing that I feel like is just so important is cleaning the bluffs. Especially with the volleyball stadium built right in front of them. All the camera angles, the drones, everything that's going to be filming this are going to see the shopping cart wedged in the crevice and some of the large pieces of debris that are stuffed in the bluffs there. And I know it's a Caltrans thing, and I've had these conversations before, but I know we can get it done if we throw enough money and effort and time into it. So that would be my one thing. That would be a huge way to prepare for LA. Another one, this is much smaller, but it also is highly visible and an easy fix. I've been talking about this for years, so if you've heard this before, forgive me. There is this wall. I think it's a ruin from the Sorrento Beach Club from years ago. It's right next to the Montana Stairs. It's wedged into the bluff, and from what I understand, it kind of helps support the bluff now. But it is probably the largest eyesore we have in this community, and it is highly visible. You see it on PCH, you see it from the beach, and at any given time it's covered in graffiti or posters or random stuff, sometimes homeless encampments kind of around it. I mean, we have all these wonderful artists in town. We have Beautify Earth, we have 18th Street, we're just embarrassment of riches when it comes to artists in this community. Could we do something with that wall that's welcome to Santa Monica, LA 28, whatever it is, because that is also part of the backdrop of our community when the focus is on the beach. And I don't think that doesn't even have to be Measure CS. That could be just, we could raise $10,000 and get that taken care of probably pretty easily. But I think the debate has been who owns it?
Right.
Who does it belong to? Is it ours? Is it Caltrans? And graffiti artists don't seem to care who owns it. Right. So if we get a proper commissioned artist in there to beautify that. Anyway, those are my two, both related to bluffs. I don't know if anyone else has any. We want to think of something next time, but I do feel like it's all hands on deck in preparing us for these events and to put our to shine.
One thing I don't think we're prepared for, and I don't know if anyone is going to give me an answer, but the metro line I think is going to be the biggest thing for tourists, for people visiting. If that doesn't happen at the timeline that we want it to, not that we can do anything about it, but that's been on my mind, then we're going to have a big traffic issue.
Definitely.
Or cleaning or making it safer or
Opening it. The purple line, sorry.
oh,
Yeah.
To speak to the Olympics, we have a committee that's kind of planning for that, right? Like, what can we do? Now, we do have restrained resources. Right now, we don't have money, right? And so we're hopeful that things pick up so that we can invest in these things that we talk about. But we do have a committee kind of setting up so that, if the Olympics are here, if they're not here, it doesn't matter. People are going to be coming to Santa Monica, right? And so we want Santa Monica to shine. And so we're looking at that stuff. So we're developing a list of projects, and internally, we have a working group that does that. And so these are the things that, as we identify funding, we know this is coming, and we're going to be able to prioritize that. I know that Rick is also involved in that committee and looking at capital projects and what things we could do. So we're definitely thinking ahead as well.
Yeah, if I could add to that, you mentioned the chair about the bluffs. We actually do have a monthly bluffs under the public landscape division, but that's sort of a back and forth with the homes community. As we go in there, we partner with the PD on a monthly basis. We have the homeless removed, and then we go in there and clean up the trash that's left behind. But it doesn't take a week or so before our trash population comes back and we occupy some.
Did you go into the crevices though, that kind of?
We're not going to put our staff in our way. There are some areas where homes have excavated into the lost, which is very dangerous. So there's a specific spot in the bluffs where cones have actually dug into the bluffs, and we've been going back there on a regular basis. So it's a never-ending battle. But again, to Oscar's point, as funding becomes available, in the last year or two, we actually stepped it up to twice a month cleanup, but we ran out of funding for that, so now we're back to it once a month cleanup at the bluffs. But as funding becomes available, we might be able to find a way to go back to bi-monthly cleanup work.
I think what I'm referring to is really hard to reach trash that's been there for a long time. I understand your team's doing what they can where they can reach, but it's some of those deep crevices, especially closer to the pier where the bluffs are taller. Or not as tall actually, but the crevices are deeper, kind of near some of the different stairways that come down. There's stuff that's been in there for years, and it probably takes a repeller with a rope to really go in there and pull the stuff out. Because there's traffic signs, just paper and cups and that sort of thing, but there's big things wedged in there that I've seen just when I'm running on the beach and stuff. I look over there and you can tell. So that's the sort of thing that's probably above and beyond what your team can do.
Right. Our staff will not be able to.
No, but maybe we do one requirement once a year. We hire some rock climbers to come in and go and push the stuff down, and we go and clean it up.
But the only what that poses for the city is this risk that we have to assume when we hire people to do that kind of work.
Be worth it. Pretty Olympics.
Can we use a drone instead?
Well, whatever. I don't care what they can do, but
I feel like drone would be safer and less potential fiscal liability if someone gets hurt.
well, can the drone pull the things out? It's wedged.
They make crazy cool drones nowadays.
Well, whatever the method is, that's fine.
I'll defer to the experts.
2055 budget.
Anything else?
Do we have an update on, I know that there's going to be some sort of construction on the pier, but I'm not exactly sure.
Are you talking about the pier bridge?
Yes.
Yes, that's
What
still.
is happening?
It's in 60% design.
Okay.
Construction is scheduled to start in 2020, end of 2025 or early 2026, and we're planning to be done before the Olympics arrive.
So during the World Cup, that will probably be constructed.
Right.
Okay. And that's just the bridge that goes over to the pier.
Connects Ocean Avenue to the pier structure.
Thank you.
Anything else? Wish list items? When do you think we'll meet next?
So right now it's between February and May. I mean, would it January work for you, Paul? I mean, we could meet again in January. I know you mentioned the frequency, maybe we meet more frequent, but I mean, I don't know. It's up to you.
I mean, is this helpful for you? It's certainly
Well,
helpful for us.
we want to report and we want to be held accountable for our work. And so twice a year is good with us. We have all these other committees that I think for us it's good that we're not meeting more, right? It takes preparation to do this. So twice a year, it would be January again. This time we want to do it and hopefully we can get a forum for May. Because here's what we wanted to align is the May date aligns before we go to council with the proposed budget. And so we hear from you on things that if we generate more revenues, then we can give that information to
It'd be better
council.
than to do like December and April, so we know
That
if
works.
April doesn't work out, because sometimes these meetings don't work out, then we can push to May.
Except for the holidays, right? A lot of people are out. Definitely, I mean, we can consider that and see, yeah,
Or
definitely.
January, I mean, that's fine, but just because of what happened with May, it's going to push to June.
Well, we're open.
Great.
Enough advance notice, coordinate our schedules.
For every day.
Definitely.
All right, anything else? Thank you, everybody. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
work.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, this is really comfortable for us.
Good see you. Good to see you. We'll be here tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.